Thank you, Dr. Fong. So, my name is Patty Wong. I work for OEHHA on the synthetic turf study. So, I will start today's discussion by providing an overview of our study. The OEHHA study consists of multiple study tasks. Here is a brief outline of each task. And you can see this is the timeline of the study. And we have been ongoing since 2015. And we have today's the fourth meeting of the Scientific Advisory Panel. And let's look at the task. Task 1 is involve consultation with the expert and the public. The panel has been meeting annually since 2016, and today is the fourth meeting. In the initial stage of the project, OEHHA has held a series of workshops to meet with local community stakeholders. In the past few years, OEHHA has been in communication with federal agency and international bodies involved in the crop rubber study, the tire crop rubber studies. And in the last year, OEHHA has met with US EPA, US Environmental Protection Agency, the ATSDR, Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease Registry, NTP, National Toxicology Program, Health Canada, and the National Institute for Public Health and Environment, RIVM of the Netherlands, to share information on the tire studies. We also met with researchers from UC Davis to consult our non-target analysis protocol. So detail of the progress of our workflow between each task will be discussed in the next slide. Here, just a brief overview. The task 2 involves focus on identification of chemical concern and hazard for synthetic turf field and playground construct with recycled tire chrome rubber. The task 3 involved in this development of an exposure scenario, which involve identifying the field user categories and their activity or behavior on these field or playground. And then we use it to assess their exposure. Task 4 involve characterization of chemical exposure on synthetic turf field and playgrounds, which include collecting and characterizing the composition of sample from field and playgrounds. Task 5 is to develop biomonitoring and personal monitoring protocols. Data on the chemical and exposure obtained from Task 3 and Task 4 will provide knowledge, including scientific literature search, will guide the development of this protocol. Task 6 is the assessment of human health risks from exposure on synthetic turf field and playground. So we are progressing in Task 2 to Task 6, and we are working on chemical analysis, identifying hazards for chemical, and also working on the exposure assessment tasks. Combining the knowledge and the data, OEHHA will assess the potential human health risks and hazard from exposure to chemical release from synthetic turf field and playground. At the conclusion of this study, OEHHA will complete a report documenting the risk assessment. So today we'll focus on discussing Task 2 and Task 4 for chemical characterization of chrome rubber, and also Task 3 for exposure scenario development in the morning. So 2 years ago, Dr. Kyle suggested we should have a roadmap about how the whole study relate to each other in terms of the tasks. So last year we presented a roadmap, and we updated for this year. So before we go into the roadmap, just housekeeping. The color on the legend, the yellow represent the items that we have discussed in 2016 and 2017. The green, the middle kind of gray-green, is the item that we discussed in 2018, and the brown box is the one that we're discussing today. So it's kind of a complex flowchart. Okay. Okay, let's look at the work tasks and how they relate to each other, how each task interact with each other. So, other than the task one, which I described about consultation with expert and public, this flowchart covers task 2 to task 6. So task 2 is hazard identification. This task involves identifying chemical of concern for our study and research their potency criteria and health endpoint and hazard. And we have discussed this information in 2016-17 and will continue today. OEHHA conduct a thorough literature search on synthetic turf, crumb rubber, and tire-related study. We construct a tire-related chemical database, the little barrel down there. We have discussed in the past and will continue today. In the database, we identify chemical related to tire, but we also add chemical that has been ongoing in the federal study, their chemical that they find. Using this chemical list as a guide, OEHHA staff has been collecting from existing database on toxicity and potential data for chemical, potency data for chemical that has been detected in field sample. And today we'll discuss the use of this chemical database in our targeted and non-targeted chemical analysis of the crumb rubber sample, which is a crucial part for the field characterization study, task 4. So next is task 4. It involves in characterizing the field. OEHHA received input from the panel in the 16 and the 17 meeting, and we modify our protocol for field sampling accordingly, and we implement the protocol. We finished sampling the field and playground in the summer last year. And we have completed all the sampling on field and playground. So we have collected environmental data, including temperature, particle count, ozone, relative humidity, solar insolation on and around the field and playground. In addition, we also collect air and particulate matter and crumb rubber sample from each field. In the last meeting, we discussed the preliminary data for inorganic analysis of crumb rubber, and also some of the environmental data collect on and surrounding the field, and we present it to our panel and the public. Currently, we are working on identify the chemical constituent in crumb rubber. The understanding of the chemical composition of crumb rubber will help guide our bioaccessibility measurement of this field sample. The bioaccessibility measurement can be used to derive the level and the nature of the chemical people might expose while using the field and playground. We are currently working on targeted and non-targeted chemical analysis. And today we are seeking input from our panel on our approach on the non-targeted chemical analysis. So the non-target and the target chemical analysis will provide data for chemical concentration, which we are, since we haven't fully identified the chemical, so it won't be in our discussion today. That's why it's kind of blue on the barrel. The next task is the exposure scenario development. Last year, OEHHA received the panel's input on protocol and preliminary data of our time activity behavior study of soccer player on synthetic turf field in California. The time activity study has been completed in the summer last year, and we have analyzed the data. So currently, OEHHA staff is evaluating the potential pathway of human exposure on the turf field and researching the exposure parameter that can be used. So combining the results of the time activity study and the literature research, the chemical identity, the concentration data from task 4, we are developing model and exposure equation to estimate the multi-route exposure dose for player on field and playground. In today's meeting, we will summarize the exposure pathway along with the exposure equation and the parameter, and we are looking forward to input from the panel and the public. Oh, sorry. The equation and exposure risk, the exposure and the risk will then be summarized in the Human Health Risk Assessment Report, which is our next task here, the task 6. And the chemical and exposure data will also be used in the development of the biomonitoring and personal monitoring protocol, which is a task 5 here. So this is the summary of our roadmap for the turf study.
So thank you, Patty. And I want to thank you for walking through the study roadmap. At first glance, it appears very complex, but you walked us through it very well. And it also shows how much work has been done so far. I just want to congratulate you and your staff and collaborators with all the work that's been done so far. So I turn to my fellow panel members. Any comments about the overview of the study at this point? Okay, well, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Just push the button there.
I'll speak. This is Linda Sheldon. Just clarify for me at the end, task 5, it says apply knowledge on exposure and chemical data, evaluate feasibility of monitoring processes. That means that you are not going to do monitoring for that. You're just sort of going to make recommendations as to what would be feasible. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
We are going to develop the protocol. For the scope of this study at this point, we are covering the development of the protocol. Yeah, but we are not doing the actual measure in this study.
I just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you.